a brand new
Good morning and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. As we continue our conversations this morning, we are continuing in the vein of finances and the THA, and we're talking about the THA budget review. Last week we had the Chief Secretary go to the House and make his budget presentation. This morning we're talking with Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt Angus on her views of that presentation. Good morning, Dr. Angus, and welcome back to Tobago Updates.
Good morning, Shinelle, and good morning to your viewing and listening audience, wherever you are.
Right. In the past, you have indicated that you agree with the sentiment that Tobago deserves a larger piece of the pie when it comes to the allocation from the central government. What are your views on the amount that has been requested from this current administration of 3.956 billion, down from last year's request of 4.54 billion?
Well, definitely, Tobago has to be able to catch up with the overall national development, and a budget of 3.95 definitely is not going to have us catch up. However, we cannot be just asking for monies and not demonstrating that we are utilizing it effectively or that we're able to grow those monies. And I think this administration has not been able to demonstrate that it is growing the money in any way, and basically is into just consumption. And maybe they felt that they weren't worthy enough to demand more. But definitely Tobago requires much more than that to be able to catch up with the development at the national level.
But they have requested more in the past, and we've never gotten the more that we have requested. So isn't it unrealistic to continue to ask at a high level and not be given that money, and to continue to come before Tobagoans making promises of what can be done if allocated a particular amount of money, and not seeing that money, not being able to deliver to the people?
But requested more to do what? This administration has not set out to really sit down with the central government and determine that there are programs that can be done that would contribute to the overall development nationally. At the end of the day, we are Trinidad and Tobago, and the development in Tobago contributes to national development. So they have not been able to persuade the government that Tobago's development is national development. All that we have seen happening is that it just says Tobago, Tobago, Tobago development. But we're not seeing the bigger picture, that Tobago's development is national development. And to be able to persuade the central government in such a way that when you invest in Tobago, it's not just investing in Tobago's development, you're investing in national development.
But doesn't the idea that one has to persuade the central government in order to give Tobago what Tobago rightfully deserves go against the idea of Tobago's autonomy and Tobago's own development?
Well, what does Tobago rightly deserve? The Dispute Resolution Commission said 4.03 to 6.9.
And we've never seen
We have
Tobago
never
getting
seen
any
it.
part of
We
that
have never
upper limit.
seen it. Again, has Tobago put forward a credible conversation in terms of demonstrating what can we do with the monies, that it is not just you're giving us a consumption type budget, but you to give us an investment budget. An investment budget that can take you away from talking about a Tobago fund, which comes with its own connotations, because a Tobago fund that they mention is not an independent fund. It is one that would be controlled by the policy or the politicians, and therefore can lead towards, issues of corruption and nepotism. But what you want to have is a Tobago Development Bank that is type of independent bank that can receive, that can be revenue generating, taking monies from people in Trinidad, people from around the region, people internationally, the diaspora, and attracting investments from elsewhere, such that the Tobago Development Bank can now focus on low interest loans to Tobagonians to further the development of Tobago. And that is what I am talking about when we say get, adequate, credible ideas that you can present to the central government, because a Tobago Development Bank based in Tobago benefits the central government at the national level. So those are ideas that we have to start putting in place. And that is when you begin to have revenue generation on the island, such that at some point, whether the government give you 4.6 or 6.9, it's icing on the cake, because you're generating revenue for the island.
So when you heard the Chief Secretary's presentation last week in the House, you don't think that the presentation that he made covered that ground of presenting solutions or projects
Absolutely
or ideas
not.
that...
Like I said, you present a Tobago Development Fund. That is still government, THA owned and operated. We have to start getting away from those models where the THA has to employ everyone, the THA has to drive everyone. Where's the space for private sector to grow? And that those ideas don't give the opportunity for the growth of the private sector that we need, the kind of independence we need, the growth of communities that we need, such that it overall takes Tobago much further, much faster. So the budget did not represent that. And if we look at the budget, it was a bit deceptive, because when you're presenting a budget, you're basically talking about last year's achievements. He presented a budget based on 2 years and 6 months. I mean, we're not looking at that. We want to know what you did in last year, and therefore, what was the growth rate that you did in last year? How did we measure that? Apparently, the growth rate that they put forward was for the last quarter. What about the overall last year? What was the growth rate? The growth rate for Trinidad was not put forward in comparison to Tobago's growth rate. And therefore, you had some missing in terms of the statistics that did not give the community a clear picture of where do we stand as an island. Where is the economy as an island, and what can we all do to take it forward? I mean, when you begin to look at areas like the fact that the suggested tourism was 13% contributing, but in years back it was 14%. So what that shows is that whilst your economy is where it is, you have a declining tourism product. Even though you're saying we're increasing numbers and all that, you have a declining tourism product. We need to start thinking differently even about our tourism product.
Right. And they presented a theme, unlocking Tobago's development potential, with a focus on human capital development. Is that something that you agree on in regards to Tobago's human capital development needing a lot of attention at this time?
Human capital development to where? You have over 2,000 people who you've trained in the vocational skills. Where, yeah, we invested in human capital there, but where are they going after that? What are they doing? And I think a better theme would have been reversing the economic decline through community empowerment. Okay? Because whilst they put forward that unlocking, it didn't come out in what they were saying. And that is a long-term kind of view. But even in the long term of it, you did not see the processes and the programs that would deliver that kind of theme. And therefore, if you really dealt with the short-term crisis that we're in, which is the economic decline, then you would have put something forward like reversing the economic decline through community empowerment and really focus on empowering communities wherever they are. And I think that would have been a more relevant budget to deliver at this time where we are in the crisis of an economic decline.
Understood. Well, guys, we're going to take a quick break right here and we're going to return with much more conversation. See you soon. It's a brand new morning. Good morning and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. If you're just joining us, well, that's a shame because I've been chatting this morning with Dr. Denise Tsoiafatt Angus and we are talking about the budget review of the THA. And before the break, we were talking about areas of focus and you indicated that, revitalizing the economy would be a better fit for a budget. What are some suggestions that you have for increasing or revenue generation here on the island?
Okay. Well, we spoke about the Tobago Development Bank as a huge opportunity. One of the areas that we should be looking at is moving into an alternative type of tourism that is not just sand, sea, and leisure, which has not been getting us the kind of output that we have been wanting over time. We need to begin looking at the areas like, take for instance, educational tourism. Educational tourism, not just treating with creating educational programs for Tobagonians, but partnering with international institutions to host an educational program on the island physically, so their students must come here, and and through that, Tobagonian students will also be able to access those areas. But what you have is longer stay tourism on the island, and therefore you cut back on the carbon footprint, on the number of flights that you have to go back and forth, which is an important thing right now as we're dealing with climate change and all of these, hurricanes that we have coming. But which increases automatically the number of persons on the island. It increases the number of persons who would visit your stores and your food places, all of that. So the private sector would be happy because you will have an increase in population size to some extent, and not just the weekends or a week at a time, but people who are actually coming for longer stay. And of course, Tobagonians benefit because you will have an increased job market, you will have increased opportunities to attend and achieve a university type certificate right here in Tobago. And I know medical tourism has been tapped out, where other islands are having medical schools. We're not talking about a medical school, but something like marine and coastal erosion, a type of university studies where they can assist us in studying our coastline actively and our marine life. And therefore, persons have to travel from their other university campuses to come here and study like that. Of course, there are other university packages that you can put together with that to form a multidisciplinary campus from different universities here in Tobago.
Right. And I also heard the Secretary for Food Security talking about that Tobago Agricultural Institute. So I guess you are along that same lines in regards to those suggestions. But your suggestions
but we are
also play back
talking,
into the idea of the human capital development, which is very similar to the theme that was presented for this
but we're
budget.
talking about more. You're talking about revenue generation for the island, yes, and not just focused on human capital development. You're talking about, yes, of course, it will be part of that, but you're talking about driving revenues. And when you have an international university stationed here, it is a little bit different from calling it the Tobago Institute of Agriculture or whatever, because you're expecting universities to send down their top professors and to be able to have some of our local upcoming professors actually be a part of that. But basically, it is an international institution being housed here, which is a little bit different from what is being put forward.
All right, understood. And the Chief Secretary, in his presentation, he leveled his justification against the population growth rate in Tobago. Do you agree with that justification for his ask for this budget? Because he would have indicated that Tobago's population grew from 4.58 to in 2011 to 5.8. So he is now suggesting that the actual national budget reflect that amount.
Well, I would be interested
Sorry, let me correct that. To 5.5. So we grew from 4.58 in 2011 to 5.05, right? Which necessitates a review of the DRC ruling. So he emphasized that the budget should represent that 5.8% of the national budget.
Which is, again, for me, a bit short-sighted because, and again, we're playing with numbers that are not straight. Because we've been talking about the declining birth rate on the island. So up to when was that 5.5% measured?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Right. So it wasn't till this year, because we have been having a declining birth rate. And they needed to speak about activities that they're going to be treating with, programs they're going to be treating with to deal with the declining birth rate that we have on the island. And I would like to see more programs put in place to study it, to treat it, to deal with it. Because there are many issues that we have now that we can address through programs to deal with that. Yeah, but that is something that we absolutely have to deal with because there is a declining birth rate. So when you talk about, when you measure Tobago's numbers according to our number of citizens, that's a losing argument. That's a losing argument.
In regards to the justification.
In regards to the justification, as a matter of fact, that's a dangerous argument to make. Because if they're going to say, okay, well, you all just have, you increase by whatever percentage, but you still have, 60% of people on the island. If they measure us in terms of that is our distribution versus the rest of the country, we're in a worse off position. So I would say that is a dangerous comparison to make. And if it is that you're making the comparison because you're stuck in a recurrent consumption budget, then that is where you'll always be stuck. But if you're looking at the development budget, you can't be equating our increase, what you consider the increased population rate on the development budget. And so you again, I don't know if it is that he really doesn't understand the economics, or he's trying to fool the people. But you cannot be asking for that based on an increased population size. You have to. So is it that you're asking for an increased recurrent budget?
No, they
versus
actually
an
decreased the
development budget.
The ask for the recurrent budget this year has actually decreased compared to previous years.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that you cannot equate the population growth on the development budget, because that's a losing argument. That's a losing argument. What you need to be doing with your development budget is saying to central government, listen, this development budget, these programs that we are putting in our development budget is expected to have the returns to the GDP of X amount. And therefore, the central government begins to see how Tobago is currently growing through that development budget to produce more than the, 12%? That we produce into the GDP right now. And that's where the argument is. They're not seeing that we are making significant investments to have returns such that it really makes a significant contribution to the GDP. So however, that argument is a failed argument.
Even in areas where significant justifications are made. For instance, let's look at the oil spill cleanup and the request that has been made to the central government and what was actually allocated. Can we truly say that if Tobago gives a good justification for the money that it asks for, that we will receive that, as opposed to there being gatekeepers at the central government level who are there, who make the final decision on what we get? Does the justification from the Tobago House of Assembly truly make a difference in what we get on a yearly basis?
Well, what you've started out with is personality conflicts that have now become barriers to our development. You know, very early between the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary, there have been serious personality conflicts, disrespectful conversation, disrespectful, comments across, both sides.
Yeah, but this goes against the argument that if Tobago makes a good justification, that we get what we want.
But
so it seems like, as you're suggesting, personalities are dictating what Tobago gets and what Tobago doesn't get.
Absolutely.
But when we look at Tobago's development cannot hinge on person's personality and how they feel about the Prime Minister, how they feel about the Chief Secretary.
Absolutely.
If we are talking about progress of the island, that needs to go to the side.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. So what we need to have is mature leadership.
Correct.
Mature leadership where we can negotiate those things. Mature leadership where you can have them understand the economics and the impact on the national economy from Tobago. So that is what we need right now. But those personal, vendettas that they have against each other is not taking us anywhere. And I have to talk about the fact that the Prime Minister and his team, along with one of the ministers from Tobago, brought a whole group of international people from India to visit Tobago to talk about what opportunities in the Tobago tourism area that they can get. Totally disrespectful, and they should pay the price for that. Okay? Because I don't care who is in the Tobago House of Assembly. At the end of the day, the Tobago House of Assembly is responsible, and therefore you cannot be doing that without having representatives from the Tobago House of Assembly or even discussing ahead of time what are the priority areas or what is the tourism policy for the Tobago House of Assembly on this.
Especially when there are so many projects that need to be executed, so many facilities that need to be upgraded, so many beach facilities that infrastructure needs to be added there to make it a proper tourist site, especially when we look at the eastern end of the island. I didn't see that the representative for Tobago East was a part of that.
Let's not even justify that.
No, I'm just saying.
Fact that step foot on the island is enough disrespect.
Right.
That we should not be tolerating.
Right. I'm just saying,
as a people.
All of this being that the THA is trying to do, to have someone come in and not even have them be a part of those type of conversations.
The THA has been getting more monies than previous administrations, and they could have done more with what they have gotten.
But we have
Okay?
heard that
So
the Secretary for Health, she would have indicated that although they have, quote unquote, gotten more monies than the previous administration, when you look at the national allocation or the national budget, it was the same percentage. But if the national budget increases, obviously Tobago's amount will automatically increase. What do you think about it, especially when they came in and they met a lot of debt to cover, specifically with those contractors that needed to be paid? How do you measure that against what was done previously when they had to? Well, I mean, I think we had this discussion last week. Let us not forget
that additional monies were also sent for those contractors to be paid. Okay? Let us not forget that. Let the people of Tobago not forget that additional monies were sent to Tobago for contractors to be paid. Barring that, if you have a house and you have debts and your employer has given you a bonus, yes, in addition to what you normally get, you don't study what profit margin the employer getting. You deal with what you get coming in, the bonus. You determine what are your priorities, how you're going to treat with what is happening, how you're going to endorse and have that money grow in some way. You know, we're not thinking. We have the increase from, and I'm digressing a little bit here. You say you're increasing the social safety net of the food cards from $500 to $1,500. I think some of it is needed. But where is the money coming from? Else, if you don't determine where the money is coming from to do that, you may be able to give a few people that extra, but at some point you're going to say the money run out sooner. Because you have no way of generating funds to sustain that going forward. So it is a quick fix. It's a temporary fix, but it is not a sustainable program going forward. When you give that family the $1,500, is it just a food card here? Take the $1,500. Are you assessing that family for their absolute needs overall? Are you assessing them to see how they can be retooled for better jobs to feed themselves? Are you assessing them? Do they even need jobs? What little business can they create for themselves such that they can feed themselves more? Yeah. Or is it $1,500 every month that you're going to be giving them? So there has to be more than just, okay, well, we're giving them $1,500, which may sound very good to some grassroots people on the ground, but at the end of the day, where is it taking them?
Understood. And then we want to take people out of that state of dependency as well.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, we have to wrap up this morning's discussion. And hopefully when we chat again, we get to chat for the entire hour. But we want to thank you so much, Dr. Angus, for coming on and chatting with us. It's always a pleasure having a great conversation with you guys. Unfortunately, we end here. So I want to thank you for being a part of this morning's conversation. Thank you for your likes, your shares, and your comments. And again, I am Shinelle Felix, and thank you for doing all that you have done and continue to do to make Tobago Updates the #1 broadcaster here on the island of Tobago. Enjoy the rest of your day.